Hello and welcome back to FT.com. I am here with our US Managing Editor, Gillian Tett, and we are going to discuss a quite remarkable lunch we've both been lucky to go to on Wall Street at the Economic Club of New York, where the ECB head, Mario Draghi, was under questioning from the former head of the Bank of England, Mervyn King. Now, Gillian, Mario Draghi is obviously most famous for promising to do whatever it takes to deal with the Eurozone crisis and largely dealing with it. Is he trying to do the same trick again?
Well, this was an extraordinary lunch. I mean, the sight of Mervyn King, Lord King, asking some quite impish questions of Mario Draghi on the platform, with all the eyes of New York looking at him, looking for answers about whether or not the ECB can actually calm the markets down, was a dramatic moment. And Mario Draghi was determined to convince everyone that he's going to do whatever it takes again. What he actually said, to get my notes, was that we have the power to act, the determination to act, and the commitment to act. And it was all about him saying that he was in charge of monetary policy and it would work. But goodness, I mean, were you convinced?
Not totally, no. I mean, one other big point he made, he went into great technical detail about how his balance sheet is an instrument of monetary policy, and there can be no limit on how much he can expand that balance sheet if it furthers his objective of raising inflation, which raises two questions. One, many economists would query whether that's a good idea. And secondly, can he really overcome the great opposition that we know comes from the Germans on his board?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the thing that was fascinating was the speech was all about me, me, me. I mean, at one stage, quite literally, he said, if there is one who has shown that unanimity is not a constraint on monetary policy decisions, it is me. And it was basically, he was saying that I have decided I'm going all in on this and I'm going to try and do it. And it wasn't just, he didn't name the Germans, but he indicated countries that don't like to see low interest rates, and was quite scathing about that. He was also quite scathing about the European Court of Justice and saying that he could do anything he wanted, or being given permission by that. But I mean, I guess the question I'd like to ask you, John, is this verbal intervention, or is it actually more, and will it work?
Well, it's certainly verbal intervention. He's got to deal with the fact, as Mervyn King pointed out to him, that his latest attempt at verbal intervention hasn't worked very well. On Thursday, we had a pretty big expansion of what the ECB is doing to try to deal with deflation, and it absolutely failed to meet expectations, with the result that you saw the euro shoot up. Now, he obviously is a believer in verbal intervention, and you can imagine he would be, because it worked so well for him last time. It was remarkable that nobody ever called on him to back up his words when it came to the sovereign debt crisis. He is going to be called to back up this time, I suspect, and there have to be questions about whether he can deliver. And
I guess one of the questions is verbal intervention a weapon that only ever works once, and after that the markets become cynical and more demanding? And if verbal intervention doesn't work this time, what else does the ECB actually have? And then, of course, there is a very real question of, is this type of policy going to be actually tolerated by the Germans, or are we going to see an increasingly aggressive, perhaps isolated Mario Draghi trying to push policy forward in the face of bickering inside the European Eurozone?
Yes, plainly that's a risk. I have to say, my own judgment from the current strength of his position, he's probably right to think that he can pull this off. The danger is that he might overplay his hand. He needs to be able to show some degree of success, I think.
I mean, I agree. The other thing that was fascinating was that essentially he flew all the way over to New York for barely a day to give this speech. It was directed at the markets. And the one question that he did not answer directly at all, in fact he ducked, was about exchange rates. And one of the big questions everyone here in New York is asking is this actually going to weaken the euro or not?
Well, you would think it would have to. Plainly, what people thought they were getting from him would have that effect. That said, during his words, there was a noticeable impact on the currency. The euro weakened about 0.5 percentage point, which is a lot. But as it went up 4% yesterday, as the market was digesting the news, plainly there's still a lot further to go. I suppose let's end with one question I'd like to ask you. He is a strong believer. One of the big phrases that kept coming through was monetary dominance.
Yes.
Has he overplayed that notion that things can be done with monetary policy?
He was absolutely emphatic that he believes in monetary dominance, that basically monetary policy, he insisted, could and would work in terms of combating inflation. But he was also trying to argue that what he was doing was not revolutionary. Recalibration was the word he used over and over again.
Yes.
Everything was a recalibration. I have no idea how you translate that into German or Italian.
Yeah.
It probably sounds better in Italian.
Yes. Most things do.
Well, most things do, exactly. But he has basically put his neck on the line saying, I believe that monetary policy is going to work to beat inflation or deflation and to bring Eurozone out of its current economic downturn. If it fails, it's going to be very interesting to see how history judges him.
Exactly. Well, Gillian, thank you very much indeed. I suppose I'll close with one point that one of our fellow dinner guests or lunch guests made, which was that man has no shred of self-doubt. I think that's probably just as well when you're doing a job as difficult as running the ECB.